Semi's arrived, everyone. Everyone was like, oh, Semi didn't have a good game last weekend. Well, Semi's come along and said, phew, I'm here, baby. What a game. What a first half, especially. Went a bit quiet in the second half, but me, that kid is good at rugby. Hello, and in the week that Harry's coach signs for London Irish, rivalries resumed in Pro 14. Scotty Robinson wants a job with the Lions, and one of the greatest tragedies in rugby occurs as Jack Goodhue cuts off his mullet. While you're processing this, I'll say to you that you're listening to the Ruck and Mull podcast. On this episode, it's the rampant Reds and the bulldozing Brumbies. Sail out of the top four race, ? Wasps firmly are in it, though. Everyone gets a semi for semi. Saracens halt Quinn's top four push. Saints humble Irish, and Bath bash the Tiger Cubs. But let's, before we get into all that lovely stuff, lads, what's the biggest tragedy of the weekend? Is it Mikolai Tui being left out of the northern side and squad, or Jack Goodhue cutting off his mullet?
Well, obviously the mullet is a great loss to world civilization in general, actually. It's sort of up there with the loss of all of those great ancient Syrian relics that have been lost in the last few years. It is a real shame, and books will be written. The only solace is that there is a very deep and enduring legacy, which is stretched all the way to Beaconsfield Rugby Club's youth section, where a good number of them have gone with mullet not dissimilar to that we first saw on Jack Goodhue. So obviously it is a terrible shame to lose the original. There are so many imitators that a new hero will come soon.
Yeah, I was going to say there's no shortage around that in terms of net mullets throughout the world. I think it's still at an all-time high. There's some awful mullets going around.
Shocking.
And they're popping up left, right, and centre. You see a new name on the team sheet. There's a likelihood that they're bringing a mullet with them at the moment. Sam Matavesi's is horrendous.
Or have you seen? No, Steph Evans. Luckily, Steph Evans scored 2 tries this weekend. We'll come on to the Scarlets later on, but his hair is sorry, mate, but your hair's shocking. Get it cut. You can score some beautiful tries, but get your hair cut. Honestly, on a more serious point, Mikolai Tui, who's not in the northern squad. Also, a lot of stuff come out of New Zealand. They obviously had a massive amount of choice in there with Hoskins Stutu looking like he's back injured. I was just kind of a bit like, when you looked at the Southern squad, just very quickly on this, like they don't really have an established 8 in there, and Tom Sanders is their really only 8, and he'll probably play 8 in the end. But for a guy that dominated Super Rugby Aotearoa with stats and carries and stuff like that, he's only 23. He's played for Hawke's Bay, so that means he technically is Northern in how it was going to work. But you think, obviously, because he plays for a Southern team, you think, surely you want your best players playing. Tom Sanders isn't an 8. Tom Sanders is a 6, but obviously he's probably pushing in there anyway. He's had he deserves every right to be in there. But I just felt a bit sorry for Tui, to be honest. Like, get him in, surely.
Remind me of the South's back row options.
Tom Christie, Sanders, Dylan Hunt, which he'll put, and Shannon Frizzell is their real main options.
And Grace, I assume. Or is he still?
No, Colin Grace is
difficult.
Yeah, I thought it was quite strange with obviously the competition finishing now. Loads and loads of different people in different kind of groups on Instagram have been putting up their kind of team and tournaments and inform All Black 15s and things like that. And one of the ones that I found quite interesting is that the Super Rugby NZ Instagram account put up what they thought their form New Zealand side was, and they put Mikolai Tui as their starting number 8 for form for the All Blacks. So I think it's quite strange when you've got an account like that obviously probably knows quite a lot about New Zealand rugby. They're picking this guy as who they think should be starting for the All Blacks. He's not even in any of these North East South squads, which is quite strange. But I guess it just goes to show the strength and depth that they have. They've got quite a few options in that position.
Yeah, I mean,
go on.
He'll almost certainly be the first sort of reserve, and like they're not leaving him out for no reason. They'll have a plan for him. He's so young that there's not that him and Satutu are both very young, so I wouldn't worry too much for his long-term prospects. He's not turning up in France anytime soon.
No, he'll have another go for Hawke's Bay in the Mitre 10 Cup when that starts, and hopefully be able to prove his point in there. He was probably the only omission, but that North squad is flipping strong. Like,
I can't wait for that match. It's going to be fantastic
when it happens.
If it happens, it's true.
Yeah, they've pushed it back a week. It was quite interesting to see Rugby Pass put a thing about Ian Foster saying that they wanted to play a Tier 2 nation instead of it. But all due respect for the Tier 2 nations at the moment, are like, just if they turned out and started to play rugby, let's say you got Samoa or Tonga together, basically they should have the North-South game is the better product personally. The competition and between two players, it gives a great opportunity for Mwanga, Barrett to go opposite each other, for Jack Goodhue to go opposite. In the centre of Leonard Brown, for example, the centre options in there, maybe if they go with him. The likes of Peter Munga-Jensen, who has been class, should hopefully be given a go, and to see actually, can he cut the mustard against established All Blacks, and just give the All Blacks, these guys, an opportunity to see if these guys can cut it. Do they need to necessarily go for a Damien McKenzie player, where McKenzie, we know what McKenzie can do, and obviously he's not had the greatest Super Rugby Aotearoa because the Chiefs have struggled, but maybe you give a guy like Geordie Barrett a go in that role, Will Jordan again in that position as well. So yeah, I can't wait for that game. It's supposed to be pushed back to September the 5th, but yeah. Did you say one thing on that, Harry, or do you want to try and move it on?
I think I was just going to briefly say on the fact that they would have preferred to play a Tier 2 nation. I think that's, if anything, just a bit of a recognition in New Zealand rugby that they need to do a bit more to sort of give back a bit to the wider international rugby teams. Obviously, there have been a few attempts to get a bit more integrated with Fiji and Samoan rugby, but more grassroots and, well, not quite grassroots, but not really led very well by the New Zealand rugby, and given that the Australian Rugby Union have been doing quite a good job, including the Fijian Drua. I think there's a bit of an embarrassment there that New Zealand are the ones that sort of historically have a slightly bigger islander population and don't really do much with that. So to have given back with an international match at this time when those countries aren't going to be touring anywhere, obviously a few of them are coming to the Northern Hemisphere later in this sort of autumn window, but it would have been good. It would have been good for them to have the chance. But as purely as a matchup, I'd much prefer to see this internal All Black match.
Yeah, it would be great, and hopefully maybe we could potentially see something like England copying the same thing. I don't know how that would work, but that would be still quite interesting. Super Rugby AU still going on. We're in round 8 now, so we've got a couple of rounds to go before obviously we go into the semi-finals and the finals. The Reds have sort of re-kicked themselves back into that sort of top 3 spot with a very comfortable 57-5 victory over the Force. Force starting to show that though they're plucky and they've played some good rugby in parts, that actually their lack of quality is starting to really come to the forefront. But I thought the Reds were absolutely superb. I really, really enjoyed watching that game. Tate McDermott is my favourite 9 in the world right now. There's obviously a lot of talk about whether who's going to be the next 9 going forward for the Wallabies. Pick him every day of the week. Like, he hadn't started the last couple of games. My God, he makes a difference. Scored 2 tries. Brad Thorpe didn't even take him off. He just put him on the wing in the end. Just cracking player. And Tanane Tupu as well. Like we've said about Carl Sinclair being the best tight end in the world. This kid is just, admittedly, like the standard that of AU is not maybe up there as opposed to the World Games, but Tupu is just flipping killing it. Absolutely killing it. Just, I've never seen a prop run so much. Just brilliant.
Yeah. That break that he had that led to was it the second Daugunu try?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Where he gets on a nice clean break, is outrunning the defence, does an in and out, a proper shoulder feint, and has the balance to then sort of get himself back up and do a really nice pass. And the vision to do that pass as well is seriously impressive.
Yeah, as I say, that was their highest away win in the history of the Reds as a franchise, which is great for them. They just look like a team having fun. Like, they generally look like they're having fun. Haven't really got a lot to say on the force. It would be bad to sort of say that they weren't great, but then they're a team that haven't played at Super Rugby level. They're playing at the NRC, which is obviously a step down. They could probably do with a couple of quality players, and if they are going to continue in Super Rugby, however Super Rugby is going to look, and I'd love to see them back. Like, from obviously we're speaking from externally in Australia, but surely you want to get Perth is a big city out there. You want to have a franchise out of Perth, surely, of some kind. But they could do with a couple of younger 23 to 28-year-old Australian players in there, not Richard Kahui, again, not saying anything wrong against him, but he's 35. John O'Lance is in his 30s. Obviously, they've got Kieran Longbottom, who's been around. Greg Holmes has been around the block. Like, good players, but they are, when you're playing against a young, youthful Red side that are going to offload the ball, that are going to be quick, like, that they are going to struggle, unfortunately. Just move on to the Brumbies as well. I thought the Brumbies were class as well. In a tightly game, half-time, it was 12-11, and then the Brumbies just stormed away with it, 38-11. Some really, really nice tries. I thought Bailey Kunzel's beautiful crossfield kick to set up Andy Muirhead's try was one of my favourites. But, I mean, I've talked to you boys before, and he's probably going to come up again later on when we talk about the Premiership. But Arani Simone at the moment is, again, one of my favourite players to watch at the moment. Just his distribution at 12, he's thrown two massive 25 to 30 metre passes of Samu's try when he goes down the wing. His first try just powers over in the corner. I'll talk about Pete Samu in a minute, but Simone's sort of reinventing the 12 role. And so in the Northern Hemisphere, it seems to me in the club world, you need a massive centre. So like we will talk about Paul Asiki later. Obviously Manu Tuanang was playing 12 for Quins. Obviously you've got Sani Peart out at Bristol, just to name off the top of my head, but he's kind of he's a tall 6'4" guy, but ridiculously he can take the ball to the line. I just love to watch him play. And then just another note quickly on Pete Samu, his second try when he's holding off three defenders as he goes over the line is absolutely brilliant. How he stays in touch from a number 8 is ridiculous. Defence, bit suspect, but take nothing away. Great finish. Tars win 38-11.
Yeah. Samu is a really special player.
Yeah.
Wherever he ends up when he calls time on his Wallabies career, whichever Northern Hemisphere team can make good use of him, they'll have a fantastic player. And it's a shame to be talking like that about an Australian player doing really well for his home club, but at the same time, well, sort of home, because he had that little stint with the Crusaders.
Yeah.
But I think these players are better used in the Northern Hemisphere in a weird way. If they're not going to be playing international rugby, which I suspect he won't at this stage, or at least not a huge amount, given that he's not really been selected so far. But obviously we'll see what Dave Rennie wants out of his 8. The Australian pack, as is developing, has got some very big players in it. Certainly if you play Salakai Alotto at 6, you've got enough heavyweight carriers there that you could maybe afford to carry Samu, quote unquote carry, in that he's not Bailey Vunipola, he's not Dwayne Vermeulen. He's a slightly different kind of player, but yeah, he's really good.
I think Dave Rennie should just give him a crack. Like, as I say, I think he has been capped by Australia, but he's not got many caps. But he does something a bit different. Like your number 8 doesn't have to be Benny Vunipola. Benny Vunipola is very unique in the respect of how big he is and how his carry is. Like, you don't need necessarily an 8 to be like that. Look at New Zealand at the moment with obviously Ardi Sarvea sort of looking in as played in that role, but Samu's still a big lad, but he's just physically just very fast as well. Like, you remember back to Radiki Salmo from 2015, I think, when he runs 45 metres. Australia have gone with smaller 8s in the past. I think just give him a crack. Obviously, you got Issa Nassarari at the Rebels, who would also probably provide some good competition for him. But yeah, just, as I say, 3 players I love watching play rugby at the moment. Tate McDermott, Arani Simone and Pete Samu. one day I'd love to see all three of them play in the Premiership or in the Northern Hemisphere or something, because it would just be great to watch. Before we go into the Premiership, just want to very touch on that the Pro 14 started this weekend. I actually quite like the way the Pro 14 have set themselves up. They've got 2 games before they go into the conference finals, as it were. We'll see Benetton, for example, Benetton and Zebre are playing each other home and away, and then they'll move on. I think that works quite well. Obviously, because of coronavirus, it limits people travelling between different locations, but it's just quite nice to have two solid weeks of competitive rugby. And actually, looking at the score lines, relatively competitive. Obviously, Zebre nicking probably the result of the weekend, 17-13, scored some good tries, looked all right. Scarlets with, as I said, Seb Evans with his mullet, pounced on 2 nice tries. I don't know if you've seen it, but he charges down his kick. He's done like a Ronaldo like flick. I can't really flick with his. Basically picks his foot up amazingly. He's done it completely deliberately. It's an amazing piece of skill, and that obviously breaks clear. Edinburgh comfortably beat Glasgow in the end, 30-15. Leinster in the Munster game, Ed was very, very close. Munster missed a kick at the end to draw it up. Shame for RJ Snyman to get injured 7 minutes into his debut, which is a bit sad for them, really.
I think they're quite worried about that injury. I think it looked quite bad. I haven't seen a replay of it, but from reading the very vocal and very numerous Munster fans on rugby Twitter, it does seem to be quite a bad one. And yeah, fingers crossed it's not sort of career altering, because he's such a talented player.
I could see them, Munster, turning Leinster over next week in Thomond Park. I think, as I say, very, very close game. Considering these teams haven't played any rugby, if you compare the first week back of the Pro 14 compared to the Premiership, like, much better scores, flowing rugby, really nice tries. They looked a bit more at the races. Defence in some aspects a little bit suspect. Cardiff were quite guilty of some missed tackles, but Ospreys and Dragons have played out a 20-all draw. I haven't seen any of that game. George North, I think, has been red card. I need to go and have a look at that. Maybe we'll have a look at that later on. And Connacht have beaten Ulster about 15-20 minutes ago, so 26-20. So Pro 14's back. I like the way they've done it. It's something a bit different. Edinburgh obviously qualified now for the next stage, which is great for them. Yeah, on to next week for reverse. Very quickly, we did do a post in the week about signings. Anyone got any key signings they're excited about for the Pro 14?
Haven't really kept up with it very well, unfortunately. So much other sport happening at the moment.
Obviously, you got those 2 big ones for Munster and Steinman's. That's obviously, unfortunately, not started well, but Diolende's there, which is pretty exciting for them as well. I think he started, didn't he?
Yeah,
so
he looks a bit lean. Doesn't look as big as he used to be. He looks like he's lost a bit of weight during lockdown. Whether they'll get him back up to fighting weight, maybe, but he doesn't.
Living in Ireland, you can't fail to put on weight, surely. Just eating steaks and Guinness.
Yeah. Get the iron in.
Just something briefly on, speaking of international players playing in Ireland. Not sure if you've seen that the Champions Cup rules have been slightly amended for the end of this season, meaning that there used to be a limit, or there is normally a limit on the number of non-EU players you can play, so limited to 2. Now, obviously, South Africans aren't involved in that, so what it basically does is limit the number of Kiwis and Australians you can have in your 23, which has always meant that Leinster had to choose between 2 of James Lowe, Scott Fardy, and one of theirs,
Gibson Park.
Yeah, Gibson Park, the scrum half.
Yeah.
They've had to choose between 2 of the 3 of them, which is obviously slightly weakened an already outrageously talented team. So this slight law adjustment for the finishing this tournament under the COVID-19 slightly altered situation has only made them stronger.
Yeah.
Funnily enough. But yeah, it'd be an interesting thing to see if that affects anybody else, because I've not seen it discussed with reference to any other teams. I just know that every so often Leinster have to rest James Lowe. It was even more of a problem when they had Eason if they were, because they then had 4 of them. And Lefever's experience was so crucial to them. But James Lowe is almost all back quality and will almost certainly play for Ireland when he qualifies.
Yeah,
and
very exciting.
Speaking of qualification, they've also changed that rule sneakily. Don't know if you remember, there was sorry for the brief diversion into World Rugby law changes, but briefly, because as it affects Ireland most urgently, they have there was going to be a change where it became 5 years to qualifying residency rather than the current 3. They've delayed that change for a year, I think, maybe 18 months, which will make it slightly easier for a few of these guys to qualify. I think Scotland in particular are excited about one of their, is it Showman, the prop, will qualify?
Showman, yeah, I think he's going to qualify. There was another guy I wanted to just very touch on, which links nice into that whether, I don't know too much about him. I've just sort of did a few look when I was doing this stat attack for the Pro 14. Duan van der Meer has come up. He obviously beats 61 defenders before the restart, and flipping heck, he's run through Glasgow yesterday, just unbelievable. He's carrying the ball in one hand. He looked like Semi Randrander. He just had the ball just going in and out, but like so confident with it. Like again, hopefully he might qualify under residency soon.
That's not DTH, man.
No, not DDH. Someone completely different. This is Duan or Dunhane or Juan, or maybe I can't pronounce. Duha.
It's not any of those what you just said, is it?
No. Sorry, Dwayne.
Dwayne.
We'll have a look and correct that next week.
We'll correct that later. Anyway, he's a bloody good winger and he looks class. And Scotland would do very well with him on their outside backs. My, just very quickly before we do move on to Premiership, would be just to highlight Matt Prothero, obviously leaving Bristol, very, very exciting player. I've seen him play for Bristol when they're in the Championship against Richmond. He's so fast when he gets a bit of space. Admittedly, it's at the Championship level, so he had more time on the ball and he maybe didn't get the chance to show what he was really capable of. But I saw that when he was played against Richmond. Just Ospreys at the moment, they're struggling. They've done well to get a result against a Dragon side that have obviously recruited well with the likes of Roberts, Nick Tompkins, and Jonah Holmes, to name a few. But great pick up for Ospreys there. As Matt Prothero is one to watch for them. Should we do some Premiership?
Probably should, yeah.
Yeah. Sale. Start with Sale Exeter. 32-22 to Exeter, away from home. Sale out of the top 4 race now? 2 games they've lost on the road now?
Probably not, given that they are still 4th.
The game they lost this weekend was the team that are by far and away the best at the moment and top of the table. So it's difficult to say. And I think obviously that first game, so it's difficult to tell because it's the first game back and all the penalty changes. They just didn't get on the right side of the referee and the penalty changes in that first game. Second game, I think they've probably got that a bit more under wraps. What were they, like 10 or so points off Exeter? Was it a 32-20 something? So they're not a million miles away from them, given that Exeter are that juggernaut at the top of the table. So
they seemed to turn it on in the second half. The Sale, they were a bit quiet, and then AJ McGinty came off the bench, who personally, in my opinion, should be starting for them. I think he gives them a little bit more control at 10. Great distribution, great kicking game. They looked a little bit. They look better with him on the pitch. That was where they got themselves back in contention. Denny Solomon, I think, was it Solomon or Yard scored maybe?
Solomon, yeah.
But I personally think. I don't get me wrong. I think Rob Dupree is a fantastic player, but at the moment, I really like AJ McGinty. He made a difference when he came off the bench for them. And with all this rotation stuff, they've got a game midweek. Who are they playing midweek? Let me check. They're playing Wasps, so a massive, massive battle.
Big game.
Harry.
So the thing to be worried about, who are Sale playing after Wasps?
Oh, that's a tough question. I can't answer that. Hang on.
I can find you that.
Okay. So briefly while you do that, Sale are in a bit of trouble because they've played both of these last 2 games with their full strength, all the superstars, and they've already had one injury in McGuigan. which is an issue. So Solomon has had to play effectively a full match, and they've now got to play Wasps on Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah.
So there's absolutely no. I mean, I'm sure that some of them will play in that game, but nobody who played in this game against Exeter is going to be up to their normal standard against Wasps. Wasps having just played an entirely changed team, and the team that played last week and got 5 points out of it, which obviously helps. But the team that played last week for Wasps, their real starters, have now had a week and a half's break between last week and this game against Sale. And then who have Sale got after Wasps next weekend?
Bristol.
So, yeah, and they've got Bristol next weekend. Bristol have played two strong teams, more or less.
Yeah, they've swapped a few players out because they swapped like Pietau and Prothero wasn't playing.
So I suspect Bristol will play their change team in this midweek game, which they have against
Exeter.
Well, Exeter need to play their change team as well.
Two change teams here. I think Exeter will rotate, and Bristol will rotate. There'll be a gentleman's agreement, I think, between Baxter and Lamb that there will be rotation. I could see Randrada potentially dropping out or dropping to the bench, maybe.
I mean, the same as this Worcester game, both teams conveniently ended up playing effectively their completely rotated squads. So it's not all over for Sale. These matches haven't actually happened yet, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility that we're sitting here talking next weekend and they still haven't won a match after restart. It's probably even likely that they won't win either of those two games.
Especially with Bath, if they, argument's sake, they do lose in the week, Bath and Saints are playing against each other midweek. Whoever wins that, it goes above them into fourth because they're Bath and Northampton both on 40, Sale on 41. They lose again. Like Quins are well off. Quins are on 32, so they don't have to worry about them. But yeah, they're fifth or sixth, and they've lost all 4 games.
So obviously, Sale are one of the more resilient teams to do this rotation, given that Ben Curry's probably played an hour total in those 2 games at most. So he can just swap straight in for Tom. Their whole backline, really, other than de Klerk, can rotate pretty nicely with their reserves, with not a great deal of ability lost. Or not quite, obviously not ability is a bit of a harsh way of putting it, but
they've got strength in the back line though. Really good
superstar international players, and there are good club level players.
Yeah,
and that's the drop down. The difference is in their pack, where they may struggle a bit, but obviously they've still got some seriously, like, front row of Ross Harrison and Jake Cooper-Woolley is a very good Premiership level.
Yeah,
wouldn't be surprised if both of them start on Tuesday. So it's not game over, but full strength Wasps against tired and slightly weakened Sale. That's a good game.
Yeah, and just we'll come on to Wasson and probably next anyway. But Luke Diaga doesn't look fit at all. Like, he went down 3-4 times with cramp. Like, not even with. I was like, hoik him off.
When has he ever looked fit though?
No, to be fair, that's very true.
But he's fitness aside, he hasn't played that great, has he? I think he's there's a few lineouts that he hasn't taken that you think he probably normally would, or a player of that quality normally should. So hopefully he gets into his running soon, but we'll see.
Exeter, quickly on Exeter. I think they're by far the best team in the Premiership.
It was another case of, like, I sat here with my dad watching it again, and we're like, well, some of these players must have played against Exeter enough times. Who's moved from there? Sam Hill.
Sam Hill, yeah.
You've got to think that Sam Hill sat down at Sale and said, this is how Exeter play. And there's got to be a lot of that going on throughout the Premiership through Exeter players that have moved on to other teams. A portion of what they do is signposted. And you saw that with the Sale game. There were periods in there where Exeter weren't really going anywhere. But then they do their piece of magic that gets them through the line. They'd score their try off first phase, and they're still able to do that and still able to win games. So it's one of these things where you can know what Exeter are about to do. Somehow teams just still aren't able to stop it.
Yeah, it was. I think you're referring to the Hogg try in the second half. I think maybe where they've gone straight off the line out. It's so poorly defended though from Sale. It's embarrassingly poor defending. Like just shooting off. I think it was maybe Yard that got caught, or some. I think it was Yard that got caught in no man's land. You know where the ball's going. Stuart Hogg's running at full tilt. They know where the ball's going. Wasn't best defended.
Yeah, well, it wasn't Hogg that broke it though, was it? But the both times are two that really stick in my mind. There was one quite right at the start of the game where Slade went inside to Woodburn running a lovely line, and he gives it to Simmons to score the try. And then there was later on where Woodburn was coming outside the arc of Slade, and both of them are quite hard to defend against. Run to perfection. When you've got someone like Slade at 13 who can give those really first class fly half passes out in an outside channel, it's difficult to stop. And then as soon as it gets to Hogg, it's pretty much game over by then anyway. So it's inside them that the damage is done. I think it's just so difficult to defend against.
Yeah, and I think we sort of talked about that in the restart preview, where it's all well and good knowing what they're going to try to do. Most of these teams have pretty good analysis, and it's quite hard to think of a backline move that's not been done somewhere and somehow. Don't know if you've seen, there's a move that Northampton scored off last week that I think 3 teams scored off an identical try this weekend. So there's only so much creativity you can bring in a rugby backline, but the difference is when you have players of the quality, really mainly of Henry Slade, that critical last pass where it goes from, oh, we've got a bit of space here, to Stuart Hogg has a mile of open ground in front of him. That's the difference that Exeter can really bring to bear. And when they have Slade fit, when he's on form, there are a few players better.
Yeah, I think he's class. And the thing as well with Stuart Hogg is if you put Stuart Hogg, let's say, or argument's sake, let's say you put Stuart Hogg in Quinns, for example, who don't have the quality outside. Stuart Hogg might put himself under pressure, but Hogg has been allowed to just be himself at Exeter and just looks ridiculous because he doesn't have to. When he plays for Scotland, he's got to be the best player. He's got to be the best player. But he's just slotted in so nicely. You can tell, again, he's enjoying playing rugby, where he's got quality inside of him in Slade. He's got a clear role in there as well. Great to watch. Just very quickly for me on Exeter, I love that they resurrected the under-14 tactic of tap and going on your line and giving it to the big boy to crash over. I'm really enjoying that. Do you remember as a kid, obviously we were never that because we're primed athletes, but I can just think about playing at Basingstoke, good old Zach, prop Zach, big boy. Always knew what we were doing. Call the crash ball, the tank ball. The big boy. Give it to the big lad, push over and go. Excellent, good. Something to look out for. Go on, Harry.
Yeah, just briefly on Stuart Hogg. They're turning him into Santiago Cordero.
Yeah.
He's lost a lot of weight and is a lot more mobile than he has been in some of those games where we've seen him for Scotland be. Sort of sometimes for Scotland, he ends up being the primary strike option in the back line because they haven't got a Tuolangi or Jamie Roberts or even a Robbie Henshaw. They haven't really got the size anywhere. So it ends up being Hogg, and he's needed to be a bit bigger than you'd like to really make an impact on those kinds of plays. But Exeter over lockdown have slimmed him down and he's back to being as fast and as agile as he was when he first came into the Scotland team. And it's not a surprise, but Exeter bringing the best out of their players, be they, I don't know, Stuart Hogg, Prothero, or Billy Keast, whoever he is.
Yeah. Prop, great.
Yeah. No, it's obviously a fantastic thing to have in English rugby. It's just a bit of a shame that their off-field stuff is so frustrating at the moment. But yeah, we'll leave that to another time.
Let's go to. You've mentioned it quickly. Wrap Wasps Worcester up, Harry. From your point of view as a Wasps fan,
more and more encouraging signs. Clearly, but with an eye on winning now and also developing guys for the future and having you've got to get a bit creative with selection choices at the moment. So Wasps have sort of got used to having hookers play flanker with Ashley Johnson, and Gabriel O'Gray has done it before. I'm sure he's played age group in the back row, given that most front rowers have. But even if you are going to put him at 7, why not let him throw into the line out? Because experience is experience, and you can put the guy who's actually wearing the 2 jersey somewhere else in the line out, because he's still more than capable of lifting. I'm not sure who it ended up being.
Cruz came off, didn't he?
Yeah, Cruz started and then Barberi off the bench.
Yeah.
And I think Cruz went to throwing once. Is that right? Anyway,
it doesn't matter.
Fundamentally, it's good to see that they're thinking we've got to make the most of O'Gray, see what he can do, expose him to tests while he's still young, see how good he can be. And yeah, flying colours, I think. Score a try, pretty good line-out throwing and good in the loose, which is encouraging. Wonder if he'll end up being a long-term sort of flexible player. I suspect not. I suspect he'll put a bit of weight on so he can be in international contention as a front row. As sort of you look at Barberi, he's a much bigger player, even though he's a bit younger.
Yeah, he looks good.
Again, similarly, that try, Barberi, an 18-year-old beats 5 players from 5 meters out to score a try.
Yeah,
he's so good. Yeah, but lots of positive things. Wasps sort of all of a sudden having a very strong, deep squad.
Yeah.
When your backup wingers and fullback are Marcus Watson, Paolo Adogwu and Rob Miller, all of whom have been very good at Premiership level at one time or another, that's encouraging. Ryan Mills, as we sort of expected, deputising for Jimmy Gopperth really nicely. Sopoaga, given the 10 jersey again, doesn't let us down. Yeah, just very encouraging. Another Willis brother playing well.
Fucking hell, what a family that is. Same with the Currys as well. Curry, Willis, and yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, play a 6-2 bench with all 4 of them. That'll be fun.
7 squad, that.
Yeah.
Heavy. You could you'd have the Currys, the Willises, Anthony and Marcus Watson.
The Umongers. Get Peter Umonga Jensen over.
Yeah. We need straight brothers. Anyway, something for another time. Just really nice to see. And then another good strong bench. Vailanu did quite well when he came on. I thought he's one of those weird ones where you're not really sure why Saracens were so happy for him to leave. I'm not sure how happy they were, but a player that good, you'd have thought he'd be ideal to keep around for when Billy Vunipola's injured, but I suppose they chose not to. Briefly on the match itself, on individual moments, the Worcester first try was a clear obstruction, and I just don't understand how that stood, and it made the game much tighter than it needed to be.
They were good for 20 minutes, Worcester, weren't they? Like, to be fair to them, they've rotated the squad. I was looking at the game. I was sat and it flashed up on BT, and I was thinking, because I was like, "Oh, Worcester going to get smashed here." Because obviously, I compare Worcester Irish are all in the same boat at the moment. But I was like, fair play to them. They stuck at it. They clearly went with it. They went with their second team, but they were in it for half an hour, 40 minutes, first half, and then got taken to the shop.
Second team, but nice and experienced. Got sort of Cornel Dupré, Van Veltzer, Duncan Weir, Francois Venter, and Chris Pennell. They're probably a bit beyond the point whether you would say that they're the best player that they've each been. They're a bit beyond their peak, but certainly enough experience there that they put up a fight in these games that they end up losing, which is encouraging. Good for the product of the league as a whole. You don't want, because if we do end up with relegation being taken away, which I suspect is quite likely, you need these lower third teams to still put up a fight and be able to score tries against really the mid-table teams, which Wasps are effectively at the moment.
I think Worcester are another team that are just going to push through to the end of the season and then start again next year. They've got nothing to prove. They're like Irish. Get through, get to the next one, move on.
Especially with, I suspect Nanai is their marquee player. But when you're making decisions as a club on where to invest in the future, I suspect they'll think, okay, that experiment hasn't worked. Maybe not sign him to a second contract and move on from him. So when a club is effectively, or when you imagine a club is feeling like it's moving on from their marquee player, that sort of writes off the season, given how important these marquee players are, especially down there. Like Hugard, if he was not the player that he usually is for an extended period of time, that would really scupper Worcester. So losing the other marquee player, not so much losing, obviously he is suspended, but having him not be as good as an alternative player is a real problem for a team at that level. So you can forgive them for saying, never mind, we'll try again next year.
Yeah, I think you bang on. I think they might want to get a couple of other players in there. But again, they're going to be quite similar to Irish, and they need to sort of see where their squad's at. And if they need to add to it, they need to add to it. Let's do Gloucester Bristol next. Tricky. Just talk us through that from a Gloucester point of view. Yeah, take it away.
Yeah, I won't go over it in too much detail. It is an interesting one, quite a difficult one to watch, because it started off at the beginning of the match. Bristol came out of the blocks, and Radrada had a few very impactful moments, and you're there thinking, this is going to be a very, very long night. It didn't really pan out that way. There were times where I turned to my dad like 60 minutes into the match, and we were only like 9 points behind or something like that. And you're like, how are we still in this game? There were long periods of the game, specifically in the second half, where actually we were sort of the better team, or we had a lot of the ball, but we would spend phases with it and then do nothing, or then knock it on. Or it was a very typical Gloucester performance in that we'd have a lot of the ball, we'd look like we're about to do something with it, and then we'd knock it on, and then we'd give away a penalty, or somebody would do something stupid to cause the other team to score. So Joe Simpson diving in at the ruck when it would have been our line out and an ability to clear, he charges in, penalty to Wasps, which they score from underneath the posts. So it's moments like that that are ruining it for us at the moment. I don't think we're particularly playing bad rugby, and I never thought we'd challenge Bristol, to be honest. I thought going into the match, Bristol playing as well as they are, the players they've got on their team sheet, they should win that match. And they did, obviously, but I think that we were potentially closer than I thought we would be. And it's frustrating to be not winning those matches because of like silly mistakes and knock-ons, rather than I would preferred Bristol just beat us hands up and we're like, okay, fine, they're the better team. But I think we could have got more out of that game than we did. So I don't really know whether that's encouraging or not, to be honest, because I suppose if those things go right on another day, then we beat teams. But it's something that we've always done for some reason, and no matter who the actual player is or who the coach is, for some reason we seem to carry on making silly mistakes. So hopefully we can get out of our system at some stage. But yeah, frustrating to watch.
Some very good signs though. It's been quite a while since anybody thought that Chris Harris was going to be a really key player in a backline and sort of a main attacking outlet. He's much more of a sort of defensive, solid, sort of thought of, much more solid defensive player that is competent in an attacking sense. But some of the lines he was running and the gaps that Cipriani was putting him into, there's enough to continue to be optimistic about here.
Yeah, definitely. Just on Chris Harris, I do think he played well. There are a couple of times where he got offloads away that were good. Importantly, though, it's interesting to note when he did go through, there was at least 2 times where he went through where he hadn't run a line. There was just no one in front of him. So there was one, I think it was the one time he scored. 12 Trees put him through, and it was it was what you always should do when teams like Gloucester put balls out the back all the time. It's clear that we've got to a stage where Bristol just were never expecting us to hit the short line. So they hit him short, and just, I think it was Radrada had just read it was going out the back. So it wasn't particularly the line that he ran, just that they'd read it wrong. But he did have a good game, which is encouraging for Scotland and encouraging for us, really, because apart from that, he's not really done anything for us. And I've always been a bit apprehensive when I see him on a team sheet, because I almost feel like we've got him for a season-long loan. We've got to play him, when really I'd rather see Atkinson and 12 Trees, because I think that they're a really potent pairing when they play well. But good to see him show up. There's a few other bits in there that are promising. I don't think Reece Sam is a 15. Nope. I think it's good to try him out there and see how he gets on, but I don't think that is the play going forwards. I don't know what their thinking was in doing that, whether that was just to see what would happen, but hopefully Woodward's not injured. But he was okay, just it's not a starting position.
Yeah, I think the thing you'd be particularly disappointed about with Reece Samet at 15, now obviously these things are sort of dictated by how the match goes, but you'd expect, not so much expect, but you'd forgive him being slightly deficient in the defensive sort of clearing kicks or last man defending, which obviously wasn't so much of a problem because there was only so much he could do. But maybe he could have stopped one of those breakthrough tries that Bristol had. But the really disappointing thing is that you put a player at 15 who's normally such a great weapon running with the ball, and he only gets 17 meters, doesn't beat a defender, doesn't get a clean break, and having played for 66 minutes. I don't, off the top of my head, I can't really remember how many kicks he did get sort of straight down his throat that he could run back, but there's normally at least one a game, and for him to have not really done much with that is a bit disappointing.
Johnny May was quite quiet as well. But that was he didn't get the ball.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say it wasn't really a day that our wings were used, sadly, and I'm not sure whether that was a tactic or anything like that. Or I think it's probably more likely the fact that when we were about to launch a play, we'd knock it on or do something stupid or give away a penalty. I think that was the sort of day that we had, that we didn't. Those obviously we've spoken so much about Thorley, May, and Reece Samet being our 3 real potent try scorers and strike players. I think it never really got to them because we didn't have the ability, or just gave it away just about when we were just about to launch a play to give it to them, and which is one of the reasons why we lost. We weren't able to score those tries where they would break off and they scored in the corner. But yeah, there we go.
I would still say, from a promising side, George Skivington's had 2 good games there. They obviously beat Worcester. We'll maybe see what Gloucester are at, maybe 33 games in. But in a team where you're playing Bristol, who needed to win the game, and we'll talk about them in a moment, I think Gloucester are in quite a good place at the moment. Just very quickly on Bristol, though. Semi's arrived, everyone. Everyone was like, oh, Semi didn't have a good game last weekend. Well, Semi's come along and said, fuck you. I'm here, baby. What a game. What a first half, especially. Went a bit quiet in the second half, but fuck me, that kid is good at rugby.
I think it was only a matter of time until they started giving him the ball, frankly.
Yeah. Give him the ball.
That was the problem. I think it's just one of those guys that whenever he gets the ball, there's a very real chance that he'll beat the defender in front of him, and that causes every other part of the defence to break down a bit. The try down in the right wing, was it Purdy?
Yeah, Purdy. No, it's Malins is one in the corner that started them off.
Yeah, Malins, where there was no real particular opening or defensive breakdown that Bristol had created. It's just a really big, fast guy running at a good angle with the ball in 2 hands. And at a certain point, that outside defender has to commit. because if he doesn't, he's just going to keep running that arcing line and will score himself. So that defender has to come in to try to stop him. Quick, easy pass to the man outside into the corner. Like it's as much physics as it is rugby.
Yeah.
At that point,
it's a nice line as well. His tries, like, not necessarily a semi-Randrander classic of beat 500 defenders in a post box, offload round his back, get the ball back and do it again. It was just a brilliantly cut line. When the Purdy try is a perfect example of the unselfish nature of Randrada, that he does all the work and then just gives the easy pass into Purdy. So, yeah, Bristol looking good. As I say, I think they've obviously got Exeter in the week, so we're interested to see what team they put out for that. But probably open up for rotation. But yeah, they look pretty good. Moving on, we've got 3 games to go, so I just really quickly want to bish bash through Irish. I'm really not going to try and rant too quickly. The only thing I really had to say on Irish was we need to play on Wednesday against Leicester. First of all, we have to win the game, because at the moment we've played really badly in 2 games. There's no hardware. We were just not in the game against Saints, and we weren't in the game against Bath. So we have to be better, and we have to beat Leicester on Wednesday. And we'll talk about Leicester in a minute, because they're a whole different entity, and that might be where my rant comes in there. But Irish have to look at what their strengths are and where the hell are their weaknesses. Because at the moment, we're playing a sort of, we'll chuck a couple of good guys in. Kepu's on the bench, but we've got so many average rugby players where we've let go people like Ross Nell. Like you two said, Ross Nell's good. Ross Nell went to Wasps, but he came out the same ace pathway as Tom Fowley. Tom Fowley's been around the club, and again, he's a better player than me, because I don't play professional rugby. So it's my opinion again. But Ross Nell, we need to sign him back to Seattle. Send Tom Fowley off to Seattle, no problem at all. But Ross Nell is a player we need. He's a big fucking ball carrier at 12. That's what we need as a backup to Hepatima and Rona. Like, Matt Williams didn't look particularly good in the Championship. Jacob Atkins doesn't look particularly good in the Championship. If these guys are good at Premiership level, they have to show they can rip people apart in the Championship. And Irish don't have that. We've got some really good players in there. We've not had a bad year at all, really. Like, we were started 8th on the restart. I just think we have to play our full strength team available. Naholo's in the country. I'm not quite sure what's on Coleman, but get the best players on the pitch, destroy Leicester, and then we can see where we're at. Because at the moment, I didn't want to watch the game. I went out purposely because I didn't want to watch it. When the team's announced, it was not... I mean, Saints won the game comfortably. Yeah, I've got nothing else to say.
I thought it was quite a weird game to watch, because as a neutral / half supporting Irish, because it can happen quite frequently in rugby, where a team is sort of doing all the right things, and every so often a winger gets a ball in space and you get excited and you get that sort of feeling in the back of your head that a team is playing well. And it happened quite frequently with Hassel Collins, where the move creates the break and they do the good thing, and then they just need to do the easy thing and score the try. Or defensively, they did a lot of hard work and then something went wrong and Northampton scored the try. And if you're not paying attention to the scoreboard, it looks like what is a sort of reasonably contested match where one team is better, but you're sort of getting the feeling that the team that's not necessarily winning is doing enough to be sort of competitive. And then I looked at the scoreboard at the 70th minute, and Irish hadn't scored a try, and Northampton were easily on their bonus point.
We were the only team not to score a try this weekend.
Yeah,
that's concerning. Like, it's concerning. Like, admittedly, I said to you on the preview podcast, like, Irish, I don't care. I don't want Irish to come in the top 6, but I don't care about, we're not going to win every game because we're not Exeter, we're not Bristol. I know that. But from an Irish fan, I want to see us being competitive. the fact that we haven't got a try against Northampton, I didn't think we were going to beat Northampton anyway. But the fact we haven't got a try, or we just didn't, I don't know, that the essence, we played 2 games. We haven't played particularly well in both games. And it's just frustrating. Anything
I would
now? Can we move on?
Yeah, just briefly, what are we expecting to actually happen in that game against Leicester? Because you've played quite a strong team twice now.
What, Irish?
Yeah.
I don't think we've not played our strongest team. Where's Nahola?
I guess not.
Come on.
Well, if he's playing at all.
Generally, like I think we mixed it up. Like we've got, like you said last week, Ben Donnell's not second row. He's back row player. He's a really, really exciting back rower. He started in the second row the other week. Like that's not our Irish's first team. Like Coleman's in there. Flipping Sean O'Brien needs to be in the starting team. Naholo, Rona, Hepatima. Like
that's Rona as well. Yeah, no, that's a good point. You've probably got enough to bring in there.
Where we are going to make a difference. I mean, you watched the game. When we watched the game at Leicester, it was an absolute dross game. At least we bloody won the game, though.
True. So, yeah, speaking of Leicester, the reverse fixture of that match that we've actually been to, I think the only Premiership game I went to this season.
What a game it was.
Yeah, well.
Not really
some good moments.
Not really the Tigers, though. They were like the Cubs. They were Leicester Tigers. They were Leicester Cubs.
Weirdly, that's what I want Leicester to be doing at the moment.
Is it?
In my preview, the thing I was worried about was that they would just try to win every game on its own merits and play a bunch of 30 to 34-year-olds and try to win as many matches as possible in a sort of saving face exercise. But yeah, they're not bothering with that at all.
No, they didn't.
To be fair, some really, really talented young guys mixed in with some good sort of club level players, and I think it'll work long term. I suspect as they start to integrate people like Nadolo and obviously Ford has got to come back into the team that played.
Rivalu's not too far away apparently, and Maroney's not coming until next season. It was quite interesting to pick that up from Ben Kay in commentary, but
Nadolo.
No, Maroney.
Oh, Maroney. Okay, that's fair.
I think Van Wyk is supposed to be coming, though.
He must be. Well, he's finished.
He's been in the squad for this Premiership restart, so I don't know where he is now.
I feel a bit sorry for Thomas Lavanini, to be honest, because
doing a lot of work in a not very good team.
Can we just go into the head for him? I'll try and go in like your Borthwick. Right, Thomas, you are going to play in a game where the average age is 23. You're not going to captain. You're not even going to be vice captain. But we want you to go and play in the second row. And against
call a line-out.
Fair enough. Like I just think, and obviously he's getting paid playing and everything like that. But you feel a bit sorry for him, to be honest, because he's kind of like not cannon fodder, but he got absolutely done by Josh Matavesi. Let's just quickly put up on that. The best dummy ever. So happy, bless him, isn't he, when he just goes through. Lavanini's like, for fuck's sake. Like,
it's not what he signed up for, let's say.
Yeah, like, I was in two minds of like, I get Leicester's idea of like, we've got to blood the young players in. We've got to get the talent in there. We've got to rotate the squad. I appreciate that. But you're Leicester Tigers. You've won the most amount of premierships ever. You are 11th in the Premiership. That is dreadful. Like, you've not...
Strongly disagree.
Well,
let me just... This is the position that Leicester in, Steve Borthwick is coming into, you have one of the best academies in the Premiership. I think outside of... There was a stat that sort of academy players not playing for the club they came through, Leicester are far and away the top of that. Now, that's obviously not great because it shows that they're not necessarily keeping their academy players. But I think if you're building long term, if you want to win the Premiership in 3 or 4 years' time, because you're not going to win it right now, this is the way to do it. Get people like George Martin. He looked really good.
Yeah, he looked good.
Lavanini is just about young enough that he might still be around when the whole of the rest of the team is at his level. Ben White looked pretty good.
Youngest captain for Leicester.
Yeah, exactly. There's just about enough in some of those young backs that they played. I'm not sure Zach Henry is a long-term thing, but
nope.
I mean, fantastic for him as a rugby player for his career. Really, really good to be like good enough at Premiership level, having had a bit of a weird, slightly circuitous route to get there.
Guy Porter, Harry Potter, the wizard.
He's got a decent stat line, at the very least. I think it'll be a while before we see what they're all most capable of, and see where they might end up being. But I'd much rather they do this than play theoretically the best team every match, because it just won't work. I didn't
want them to play their best team week in, week out, because they haven't got the players to play the best team. I was just a bit like, it was just the dramatic change in the fact that it was so many players, and I was like, surely, like Luke Wallace is the exception in that it's a new sign role, and he brought the experience. Lamanini brought the experience. Cole on the bench, but surely they would have. Borthwick knows, they must have known that they were never ever going to win that game, and if they want to do that, that's fine. I just think, yes, it's great to expose them, but do you want to expose them and get beaten quite easily by Bath? Yes, they started brilliantly. They started really, really well. Really, really, really came out the blocks. Young side, no, great. But would it have been better to have, Martin, for the example, would it have been better to have played him in the back row with the more experienced guys in there? Could they have thrown Guy Porter in with Matt Scott inside of him? Whether Matt Scott's fit or not, I don't know. But I don't. Yeah, I was just a bit. It was a surprise to me that they did that. I can maybe see the rationale for it, but you've still got to look at Leicester's league position. They're 11th.
That's not Steve Borthwick's fault.
No, it isn't his fault at all.
He wasn't there for most of those games. So yeah, they have lost at home to an old rival, which is a shame. And there are probably some players who aren't quite good enough in that 15 and that 23, but there's only really one way of finding out. And when you have Leicester are not short of money, they're not short of academy pipeline, so you might as well find out who you've got, what you've got at some point. Maybe better to do it in a home game than an away game. All sorts of things might have been brought into it. So this is a positive thing, I think. I do agree that it's like you learn more by playing with more experienced, better players who are better than you are. That's how you really, really get better as a player. But at the same time, if that's not an option, which it isn't really, unfortunately, because in the end, like George Martin is playing between Lavanini and Luke Wallace on the team sheet.
Yeah,
that's a lot of experience. That's a lot of quality. That's a lot of, George, make sure you're getting around the corner. Make sure you're doing that. Well done on that last breakdown. There's a lot of in-game coaching that those two are bringing. And if that's the only thing that they achieve out of this game, if he goes from all right to, okay, this guy could be 10, 15-year player for the club, then that's worth it to lose one game against Bath.
Yeah, fair. I do get your point. I was just, I just felt maybe they went too far left field with some of the calls. Anyway, very quickly on Bath. Obviously, Johnny's not here to big up the old Bath. Thought they would look good. Obviously, they've played 2 games now where they've had relatively their strongest team. So they got Saints again. And again, they need to win though. So whether how much they'll rotate, they have to, because it's obviously a midweek game. But they look good.
Saints will need to rotate too, so they'll probably be okay in that.
And a gentleman's agreement. but they are them and Wasps are serious top 4 contenders. I think Sale may be going that way, but Bath and Wasps are definitely going up, and potentially Saints on the outside.
Yeah, no, certainly. I'd be worried if I'm a Sale fan. Briefly on Bath, yeah, really nice to see sort of this starting 15 at full whack with Urbano still to come in, although I guess he might not be, because Boyce is pretty good.
He played well.
So the rotation of that, sort of nonetheless, it's a really strong starting 15, and it's already playing up to its potential, which is nice to see. Good to see a bit of Cameron Redpath. I think that might be his first 80 minutes of really top level rugby that he's had for a little while. So nice to see him play as well as everyone thinks he can. Yeah.
I'm very impressed with Bath. Tricky, anything from that game, or do you want to move on very quickly to Quins and Saracens?
I didn't actually see the Leicester game because my nan.
We'll move on then. Very quickly on Saracens and Quins, because I've only seen the highlights of this. Love Paul Asiki. 2 beautiful tries. Crash, big unit. Saracens are pretty good because they've still got some ridiculously good players. Highlight of the game from the highlights anyway for me was Michael Rhodes doing that drop kick and then turning around and celebrating. I thought that was absolutely class. All I could think watching that game though was I would not want to be playing championship rugby next year, because some teams are going to get, some kids out of school and university are going to get absolutely battered.
Oh, you'd like to think they won't need to play but they will.
Well,
they
Billy
will play
said on the Good, the Bad, and the Rugby he wants to play, and Mako wants to play. They will. They're not going to all probably play at one go because that will just be ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, the fact they can still put out a 32-24 victory over Quins says a lot, really. Quins were good against Sale the week before. Saracens have got some flipping good players.
Strong. Some system tries, some individual brilliance tries. And Quins own, like the scoreline became, let's say, I don't even, it's not flattering, it's not close, it's sort of somewhere in between. But 14 late points from Laziki being unstoppable makes that scoreline look a lot more comfortable, or a lot more competitive a match than 38-10 would have. That could have been quite ugly, and you'd have been asking some questions. But yeah, just nice to see. Don Morris is always quite impressive in a weird, not really a great superstar player, but just good. He's nice.
He's going to play a lot in the championship next year. Him and Pablo Lucino, who's going to play, they'll be their centre 12 and 13, and then they'll chuck in Taylor when Taylor needs a run out, and then they'll rotate them back in again.
And they'll be fantastic.
Yeah.
They'll be the best by a mile.
Yeah. The championship's won before it's even started. Ealing, yes, have recruited really well, and if I was an Ealing fan, I'd be promising, and they have to win. Ealing just have to win every single game. They cannot slip up. Saracens maybe, just going off from what I've seen, Jersey could give them a little bit of a away in Jersey's tough if they don't send the right squad. If they don't send the right squad down to Cornish Pirates, could potentially be issues, but they're too good. Even the players, like, even if Lewington plays every game, like Lewington's a quality operator, they're going to be absolutely fine in that regard.
Just briefly on the star players, there was a lot of praise for Nick Ezekwe sort of being so good outside of the Saracen system, and just looking at his line-out stats, where he took 5 of Northampton's own and sold to Toji fanfare because Mike said of him took 7 of Saracens, sold 3. He continues to be unbelievably good, and people kind of stop talking about it. But yeah, he's so good.
Is he your player of the week then? Just so we can transition into player of the week. Is he your player of the week, or would you give it to someone else?
The two of them jointly, really.
The second row club. Tricky?
Yeah.
Player of the week?
It's a difficult one mainly because I hadn't actually thought about it.
I'll do mine, and then I'll give you a bit of time. Mine isn't going to come from the Premiership because mine's Tate McDermott, as I previously mentioned. Because we're not just a Premiership podcast. A lot of these podcasts just focus on the Premiership. We're not discriminatory here. We like to consider everyone in things. So not my Premiership player. My player of the week is Tate McDermott by a mile. Quality pop player. Absolutely love him. And my point about Irani Simone, I'm going to talk directly to the camera. Declan Kidney and Les Kiss, get your bank balance out and pay that man £1.5 million and get that kid over here. We don't need to buy old players. Get this 25-year-old in. We'll win the Premiership. That's what I wanted to say. I forgot to say that earlier. I love it, Irene Simone. But Tate McDermott for me, player of the week. Quality.
Cool. I'm going to go with Semi Radradra.
Hey, the Semi.
Half of brilliance, and then we shut him up slightly, but show him what he can do finally, and hopefully will continue to do. Less so against Gloucester, but against everybody else, please.
Right, 1 minute. We've got 1 minute left because it's 1:15. 1 minute. Predictions for this week, midweek game. Wasps versus Sale. One word. Go.
Wasps.
Wasps.
Wasps. Bristol Chiefs.
Chiefs.
Yeah,
Chiefs. Triple Chiefs. Oh, here we go. Game of the week on Wednesday. Are we back? Because I'm still technically in France because my car broke down. Right. I'll hopefully be back. Hopefully, I would have got around the M25, 6 o'clock kickoff. Welford Road. Irish Tigers. The relegation battle potty for next year. Who are we going with?
I'm going to go Irish.
Hey!
Hopefully. That's what I hope anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, triple Irish. Go on. Please, Irish. Please, lads. Come on. We've got this. Saracens Gloucester at Allianz.
Saracens. Sadly.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Gloucester.
It could be Saracens team, but you never know.
Yeah. I think it'll be hopefully a fun match, exciting, similar to the way that Quinn's was, but I just think that they're too good, depending on who they put out.
You know what? I'll go Gloucester because I think Gloucester rotated the team out. I think they'll rotate in. Saracens played Farrell, Attal this weekend. They ain't playing again. So give me Gloucester by 3. Very nice and quick. Worcester Quins at 6 ways.
Quins.
Yeah. Quins.
Quins, triple Quins, Saints Bath. What a game that's game of the week for me. Or after Bristol Cheap. Oh, that's tight, isn't it? Oh, that for the top 4, Saints Bath, massive game.
Yeah.
Bath. They have a stronger second string.
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I'll go Bath. I don't think they'll make that many changes and they'll still be good. Yeah, Bath for me. Right. That is Rock and Roll Podcast, episode 14 in the can. Whoop, 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 whoop. If you're not already, please do go and subscribe and follow us on the relative social media. And we'll see you next weekend for some more rugby bands. It'll be a double header because obviously we've got a review in the week and at the weekend. Maybe we do something in the week. Don't know. Maybe. Stay tuned. Peace out.